Our God reigns and the creatures do. How lovely on the mountains are the feet of Him who brings good news. Good news. God now sing peace, proclaiming news of happiness. Our God reigns. 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 He had no state before, He had no majesty that He would be drawn to Him. He was His Son, and we took no account of Him. Yet now He reigns with the Most High. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. 372. Out of the tomb He came with grace and majesty. He is alive. He is alive. God loves us so. See here His hands to lead His side. Yes, we know He is alive. Our God reigns. 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 And 170. Backing up. 170. Give thanks. Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because He's given Jesus Christ, His Son. Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because He's given Jesus Christ, His Son. And now let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. And now let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. Give thanks. And 406. 406. last verse.
Singing them over again to me, wonderful words of love. Let me let their beauty see, wonderful words of life. Words of life and beauty, teaching faith and duty. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Sweetly echo the gospel come, wonderful words of life. Offer pardon and peace to all, wonderful words of life. Jesus, only Savior, sanctified forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life.
And one more, number 413. Break thou the bread of life, dear Lord, to me. As thou didst break the bread beside the sea, beyond the sacred page, I seek thee, Lord. My spirit pants for thee, O living word. That verse. Oh, send thy spirit, Lord, now unto me, that he may touch my eyes and make me see. Show me the truth revealed within thy word, and in thy foot revealed I see thy Lord.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, everybody hear me okay? I'll try to speak over the fans, but I think tonight would be good to have the fans, don't you think? All right, so we'll do that. And I'll try not to be hot-winded. See how that goes. That didn't go so well. All right. Hey, we're continuing our study in the book of Malachi, and so we're going. If you'd like to open up your Bibles, otherwise I have all the verses that I think we are going to cover right here, and take some prayer requests after, and we'll go from there. So here we are, Malachi chapter 2. Malachi chapter number 2. And remember that from chapter 1, Malachi, by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, is addressing the priests. The priests have allowed a unworthiness approach to God to take place. He's criticized the priests for not requiring at the hands of the people bringing the sacrifices their best. And this is a reflection on the priest's attitude towards coming to God with their best. What ultimately reflects is that God says, I'm not happy with that, and I'm going to be cursing that because of where you're not bringing good worth. You're not showing worship here. And thus the priests are cursed. The people who bring these less than best sacrifices are cursed. The nation is cursed. The families are cursed, and as a result, the nations are cursed. And this is the last book of the Old Testament. And I was just looking at a book today, studying the chronology. I'm very interested in the chronology of the Bible, but it's so confusing to me. I don't know if anybody else has that same problem, but I need charts. I'm a visual person. I need just the charts to line up so I can kind of get an idea where this all plays out. And I was really surprised to find out that Malachi is right around the time of Nehemiah. And so, Zechariah's temple has just been rebuilt. And so you think about, it's after the captivity, and Nehemiah has been sent to rebuild the wall. Ezra has been in place to restore the worship and the sacrifices. The nation is being restored. It comes around the time of Esther, so we see the protective hand of God on the nation. And the best at Malachi, and Malachi is now the climax to what should be a great ending. And what we have is the people going right back into not showing God what his worth is in all this. And that's really what I learned from the chronology today. Just it's all around the same time frame, within about 100 years of where we are. This is all taking place in the culture. And it would be no different than us being able to talk even today about World War II, or even talk about World War I. The history of World War I, World War II is still pretty fresh in the U.S. history. We talk about it, and yet this would be the same kind of idea of what's going on here in Israel. They're talking about how Cyrus came and he sent people down to restore Jerusalem, and how Nehemiah was allowed to come down and build the walls. And these would be the stories of their age. And yet here come the people bringing less than honorable sacrifices about 100 years, 40 years to 100 years later. Wow. How far we go so fast. And now bring us, come up to the 21st century, and we can all go back about 40 years and say where we were as a nation, and now we springboard 40 years and we're like, wow, how did we get here? Right? How did we get here so fast? And so that's why I think it's a pertinent book when we kind of look at it, because I think as we're coming to, as we came to the first Advent with Jesus Christ, right here at the end of Malachi, some years after, obviously, we're coming to the second Advent, Jesus' return, and the cultures are pretty similar, at least in our country. And so let's take another look. As we go to chapter 2, verse 1, he says, Now, O ye priests, and now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. If you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart. Now, if you have a pen, you want to underline those if you'd like, but we're going to address those two things tonight: hearing and laying it to heart. So right away, the priests are told, I have a commandment for you from God, and I want you to hear it, and I want you to lay it to heart, and ultimately give glory unto my name, saith the Lord of hosts. I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. Yea, I have cursed them already, because, now notice this, ye do not lay it to heart. So there's a difference to hearing it, and there's a difference to laying it to heart. So he doesn't criticize them and say, because you didn't hear it. No, he's basically saying, you heard it, but you're not laying it to heart. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more tonight.
It's no different today, is it?
No different. And yet, Richard, I'm glad you said that, because we often, and I'm not saying you meant it by that statement, but I have to remind myself, it's not always about what's going on outside these walls. It seems that Malachi is addressing what's going on inside the walls. And that this is something that we have to consider in examining ourselves in this matter before we can ever get examining what's going on outside. We can see what's happened outside these walls, but I'm convinced over and over again the reason it's happening outside these walls is because inside walls like this all throughout the country, we haven't got it right. We're not approaching God the way God intended us to approach Him, with the seriousness of worship, meaning He is worth it. So worship is more than mere praise, like we've talked about. And praise without worship is only flattery at best. I want you to notice that. I don't want that to pass by you. If we, even when we sing songs, although I have to sometimes catch myself and remind myself, what am I singing? What am I doing? I have to understand that if praise could be a form of worship, but praise could also just be nothing more than flattery, because I don't have my heart in it. My heart's not in it. It's just words. And it can be the same thing when we come to church. It can be the same thing that we do in any kind of service we do for God. It could be just an outward part of what I'm doing. But if I don't have heart in it, there's no worship in this. There's no worth to it. And so you see this pattern throughout the scriptures about, how God sees something as worth. He says, if someone were to just come with a little cup of water in my name, he sees that as worship. Because there's worth, there's heart in that. He says if someone were willing to take their coat or cloak off of someone and go help give it to someone in the name of God, because it's what's right before God, and God would expect this, and God is worth me doing this, he would recognize that piece of garment, which may not be worth more than maybe, let's just throw an arbitrary price on it, maybe less than $100, meaningful, yes, but in his eyes worth so much more, right? He says that if we come with that kind of approach to him, where we give unto him, he says he'll give back. Pressed down, shaken together, shall men fill into our bosoms. And then we see, even as we get over to Malachi chapter number 3, where he starts talking about tithing, and he says, prove me and see if I won't open up the windows of heaven if you would just bring things according to commandment, according to worth of the name of God. And he challenges us even here from Malachi to do that. So let's just look at flattery real quick on the next page. Just a few verses. God, at least in the King James, I can't speak for other translations, but flattery in the King James has nothing good about flattery in the King James. I'm just telling you, nothing good about flattery. Okay, it's all flattery is basically just from the lips. It's nothing from the heart. Okay. And so you notice here, like Psalm 36:2 says, for he flattereth himself in his own eyes until his iniquity be found to be hateful. Proverbs 20:19, he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. Proverbs 28:23, he that rebuketh a man afterward shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. Proverbs 29:5, a man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. Wow, that don't sound good there. There's a couple others we could have put there, but because of space and time, we'll move on. So remember, when I love someone or something, I do things that reveal that worth. If I raise something up in estimation of value in my eyes and in my heart, I'm going to do something for it, right? So it could be a person, it could even be a thing. I mean, some things we have, we cherish. Very important. Diane and I went to a funeral. We told you about Kathy Peterman, Dave Peterman, friends of ours, and she was actually, I found out she was 45 today, but she passed away a couple weeks ago. Left a young family, and we went to the funeral over in Maine, and what what was just really prevalent to me is that the value of this person. And people, when you have someone that's valuable like that, they want to hold on to things that are hers, or that she gave, or sayings. So even though her children, I'm sure, have mementos that were hers, they're very valuable to them, right? And they're going to keep, because there's worth to it, they're going to keep it. Her husband stood up and spoke from a Bible and wrote some comments in the Bible from when they first got together before they were married, and he reread those after almost 22 years of marriage. And those were valuable to him. So there was nothing monetary, but it was worth to him. Those pages in that book were sacred to him. And then people stood up and started to give testimony of memories of her. Well, that was what was valuable to them regarding this person, and it was worth to them. Do you see it? See the connection? Things that we have high esteem to, or we bring high honor to, or we love, we find worth or value in, and we treat it that way. And it doesn't have to be something that's physical. It can be something that touches my heart, touches my mind about something. So when hence worshiping God is a service that reflects His worth, love is centric to that worship, and the heart is the place love is to be found. And so let's look at Malachi chapter 2, verse 2. He says, if you will not hear, and if you will not lay to heart to give glory unto my name, saith the Lord of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. Yea, I have cursed them already, because you do not lay it to heart. So notice there's a two-step process to correction here. Two-step process to correcting our worship. Number one, let's hear the commandments of God. And number two, let's lay it to heart. Okay? Pretty simple. And it needs to be, ultimately, the outcome is going to give glory to His name. All right? So we can say, let's give God the glory, but that's, again, those could be just words if it's not action. Right? How many of us have said in church, we want God to get the glory? Well, that's good, but it should be backed up with some action. So there needs to be the hearing of God's commandments, which is going to obviously involve obedience, and then there's the laying it to heart. So let's talk about hearing first. Hearing. I've noticed this, you've noticed this, and I don't want to get on a bandwagon, but parents today apply the principle of hearing poorly when reproving children. How many of you have gone to a store and the child is out of control, and you hear mom or dad or somebody giving correction, not just once, not just twice, but throughout the store? You've probably heard it 30 times, and they still keep correcting, right? Because why? They have to keep saying it because the child's not hearing. Right? The child's not hearing. And so the issue is not the saying, the issue is the hearing part. And so hearing is not just an acknowledging of the sound. I hear mom's voice, but how many, my wife jokes about how she thinks I need to go get my hearing checked. Right? Some of you husbands, you are accused of the same thing, I'm sure, right? Selective, yeah, exactly. Wait, what? Selective hearing, right? I hear sound, but I'm not acknowledging the words. Okay, I hear the sound, but I'm not really acknowledging the words. So hearing involves listening, which means giving careful attention or make effort to be alert to that sound. All right? It's not just hearing it in the background and ignoring it. It's about listening and trying to detect what that is. Now, I used to years ago, anybody bird watcher in here? Anyone like that? Okay, so I'm not the only one that kind of wonders about that hobby, right? But I have friends who are, and they really like it. And I lately have walked around, because it's really nice up here in the morning. I mean, it's quiet and you hear all kinds of birds. And you'll hear a sound of a bird you've never heard before. And you know what I want to do? I want to listen. I'm finding myself becoming a bird watcher. I'm saying, what is that bird? Yesterday, there's not many of these, but there are a lot of them in my home state, Ohio. In fact, it's a state bird. It's the red cardinal. And whenever I hear it, it's very distinct to me. I can hear it. It could be a long ways away, and I'll say, that's my favorite bird. I know that bird. And I'm listening, and I hear that bird. Okay, do you see the distinction? I can hear a crow, I can hear a robin, and it's there. I hear it. It's not, it's sound. But there's certain ones that I hear it and I want to listen more. What is that? Now do you understand the difference between just hearing and acknowledging sound, but listening and trying to be alert to what that sound is saying or what it's doing. Okay? And that's what we're talking about hearing. God says, I'm not just here to just make sound. I want it to be heard. There's a principle in the book of Proverbs which has been a tremendous book to me about how to help parents. And if you see me sometimes with my own kids or with others, even in the school, when they begin, if I have to speak to them and they start to do this, Have anybody had that? Now you're no longer talking to the face, you're talking to the ear. You think it's going in there. No, remember that the ears are already positioned this way to hear. Okay, they're already. Isn't it amazing? God made them so they're out like this to catch. All right.
I should hear real good then.
Yeah, exactly. But the issue is, are they being attentive? And how do I know if they're being attentive? So you hear me often say, "Look at me. Look at me. Look at me." Okay? Because now I know at least they're facing me and are attentive. Now they could be inside saying, "I'm not going to listen," but at least I don't have to wonder what they're now thinking and looking at. They're now right at me, and that's what we're talking about. And so that comes out of Proverbs 5th, chapter number 5. And you might have been thinking, boy, he's pretty bad about it. Where does he get that? Well, it's really chapter number 5. He says those that are going to learn have to bow in. They have to bring in their ear, and they have to listen with intent. In the classroom setting, you know who's paying attention, don't you? It's the one that's kind of like this, and maybe their brow is a little beat because they're really trying to think about what you're saying. But what about the one who's just kind of doodling and doing this? They're not attentive. They're not going to get anything here, okay? And so that's what the idea of hearing brings into play. We won't spend a lot of time there, but notice on the next page, at the top, there's 3 passages out of the book of Ecclesiastes Solomon addresses. He says in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 1, "Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil." And so he says in Ecclesiastes 7:5, "It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools." In Ecclesiastes 12:13, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." Okay, hearing with attentiveness, alert to the sound and trying to make sure that we understand what that sound is emanating or communicating. Let's go on to laying it to heart. This is a bigger section. Laying it to heart is a bit more complicated. There is no change outwardly unless there is first a change inwardly. Didn't Jesus address the Pharisees? He says, you're all cleaned up on the outside, but inside's where the problem is. He would say that the defilement of your heart is where the issue is, because out of your mouth reveals that defilement. The Pharisees were big into cleaning themselves up outwardly, but they weren't doing anything inwardly. And Jesus could see to that. Now, Jesus could see to that, obviously, because he's God in the flesh. But I'm going to share with you, with the time that we have, how we can be discerners of what's in the heart. We can't see the heart like God can, right? You acknowledge that. We can't see the heart. But that doesn't mean we don't know what's in the heart. Or at least have a good clue what's in the heart. Because God tells us, out of the heart are the issues of life. Out of the mouth come those issues. So when someone starts to talk a certain way, it's a good indicator of what's in the heart. Yeah. How about if you start talking to someone about the Lord? You start witnessing to them about Jesus Christ. And if their conversation goes right with you, what can you assume? There's something in the heart. If they start to back off and go in a whole other direction, already in the heart, then that gives us other clues as to what to do with what's in the heart. Okay? And so we move here then. Chambers' 20th Century Dictionary defines lay to heart. Man, there was a whole section online about lay to heart. I thought, man, I was going to have to search a long time. No, there's a whole lot here. Poems and little quips here and there about laying things to heart. And it says here, to lay to heart, to set one's mind strongly upon, to be deeply moved by something. So this matter of mind and will, emotion may be touched, but the decisions always involve the heart. I just put down some declarative statements out of Psalms where the psalmist says, I will, I will, I will. So when I lay to something to the heart, that's where my will is. Okay? I lay it to my heart, that's where my will is. I will. So we have a number of declarative statements here. I will declare the decree. I will not be afraid. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. I will come into the house. I will praise the Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. Do you see how affirming these are? How declarative, how full of faith and boldness. And these are decisions that come and emanate from the heart. So you've also heard it said, and on the next page, where there is a will, there is a way. Where there is a will, there is a way. Changing may, I should have said, changing must begin in the heart. You scratch out may. Changing must begin in the heart. Only God can truly change the heart of man. Do you understand that? Anything else is called reforming. Reformation. And there's a lot of reformation going on. Many are using humanistic tools to do reformation in the lives of people that are struggling in a lot of areas. And I applaud them for their efforts. Okay? But I also recognize that some of those efforts are going to fall woefully short because only God can change the heart. And that's a step of faith based upon His Word and the regenerative work of the Holy Spirit that takes place, where a person dies to self and becomes new. Okay? And so, although I applaud the efforts of people who are working and helping people, I understand that sometimes it's better to use the right tool on a car. So if a car requires pliers, screwdrivers just don't quite do it, right? Now, a screwdriver could be used as a hammer sometimes, and pliers could be used as a hammer sometimes. I have done that, but it's not as effective as just using the right tool, right? Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Okay, who can know it? The Lord, that's right, God. So we have to start with God in really knowing the heart. Okay, I hope all your windows are up because it looks like we're going to get a torrential downpour in just a few minutes. Just saying, if anybody's noticed. Okay?
It's actually a severe thunderstorm warning that I heard on the way out.
Okay. So we're good to be in the house of God, right? Proverbs 28:26 says, He that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. So we have to be careful about trusting our own heart. Okay, but it doesn't mean I can't learn from my heart. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Without making a complete study of Jeremiah chapter 17, where we get this statement, the heart is deceitful above all things, suffice it to say there are people in denial to the cause of the impending destruction of Jerusalem. That's what's going on in Jeremiah. They don't understand how a good God could let this be happening. How dare God do this? In fact, this morning in the funeral, Dave Peterman was talking about, or the preacher was talking about how he talked to someone about the Lord one day. And the person said this in the same statement. So catch what they said. They said, I stopped believing in God because he allowed a friend of mine to die. Now think about that. They've stopped believing in God, but they believed that God was the cause of the friend dying, so there's a conflict there, isn't there? They still believe, but they're choosing not to believe. They're blaming God, whom they don't believe, in something that He supposedly did, but they don't believe He exists. See how conflicted everything gets? And so, Jeremiah, in the day of Jeremiah, they're blaming God, but they don't understand all this. So Jeremiah 16:10 says this, It shall come to pass when they shall show, that thou, Jeremiah, shall show this people all these words, and they shall say unto thee, Wherefore hath the Lord pronounced all this great evil against us? Or what is our iniquity? What is our sin that we have committed against the Lord our God? In other words, God, prove it. Now remember, Jeremiah the prophet's coming and he's going to speak it, but they're not going to believe what he has to say about it. They're still going to say to God, God, prove it to us. I don't think you're right. In fact, God, you might be lying to us. We've got a real problem, and it's in our heart. So God pronounces their sin in Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 1. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron and with the point of a diamond, and it is graven upon the table of their heart and upon the horns of their altars. In other words, they know. It's there. There's no denying it, and they know it. And so Jeremiah's dictation from God then centers around Jeremiah 17:9, which is where it says, The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? They were denying it. They were believing the wickedness of it, but God was being truthful about it. Now, I'm not going to get into that where it says further study on the next page. Let's just kind of show you that there's some indicators about our heart. For instance, Genesis 26 says, "And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart." God knows our heart. Aren't you glad He does? I mean, there are times when things don't turn out the way that I wanted them to turn out, but I didn't mean for it to go bad. We've got some kids, children in school, or their children in our homes, and they want to do something real nice for you, like maybe make a breakfast, or they want to, or they want to get you a glass of milk and water real nice, and there's a couple of things happening. They spill it all over the counter, or they leave all the dirty dishes for you later. They meant well. They had good intentions, and God knows this. So I'm glad of that side of it. But we have to acknowledge that He sees the other side. So people can know what is in the heart of others. Let's just deal with that real quick. Obviously, God can know the heart of man perfectly, but He gives ability to mankind to discern the heart of man also. The primary way to know the heart of another is to first examine and understand your own. We're very quick to want to criticize and attack the intent of someone else. But God says the place that we should all start is a self-examination. Whether our heart is right with Him. Whether our intention is right in what we're wanting to criticize or do. See, we have a tendency automatically to go, "That's you." But God often says, "No, start with you first." And then, guess what? You'll probably find out you won't be as harsh on the other person anyways, after you've done some examination of your own heart and intention. And so, when we get down to Exodus 23:9, He says, "Also thou shalt not oppress the stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye were strangers in the land of Egypt." Guess what? This is where compassion should emanate. I look at someone else, that He was saying, look, when you bring strangers into your country and to where you're going to go, Israel, don't forget you were strangers too. What should that do? It should emanate compassion. Wait a minute, I feel their pain. And may I just say this carefully? I get that we have some border issues and we have a lot of immigrants coming into our countries, and some should not legally do that. Some should not be doing it illegally. But there are two things. There still needs to be compassion. There still needs to be mercy. And by the way, we don't have to send missionaries there. We just got to send our missionaries to the borders right now, right? I mean, they're coming to us. What an opportunity to see them saved. What an opportunity that we are starting to see. Now, I'm not condoning some of it. Don't get me wrong. But I think the place to start is not get on the bandwagon. How about we just examine the fact that, once I was lost and I was now found. I was wanting, but God gave me what I didn't deserve. And that might be the first place to start. I probably ought to move on. The people of Israel could not know the heart of strangers. Or the people of Israel could know the heart of the strangers because they themselves experienced similar things. Thus, my personal experiences, good or bad, can be gauges. In essence, we know human nature because we know our own nature. God said, "The heart knoweth his own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy." There's no one that knows your bitterness like you do. So you get what I'm saying? It's not hard for you to discern what's in your heart. Okay? God knows what's in your heart. Sometimes it takes a little bit for our heart to come to the forefront, but we know what's in our heart. And so he talks about compassion on the plight of others, the knowledge of how to help others, and an awareness to what is in the heart of another. Notice what Solomon says in Proverbs 20, verse 5. "Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding would draw it out." So in other words, sometimes it's even hard for us to discern what's in the heart, but someone of understanding is going to be able to talk and be able to draw it up like water out of a well, and all of a sudden there it's going to be. Look at it. There it is. These are people that are very good counselors. I've had firsthand experience with some down at LifeMap. Do an outstanding job bringing things to the surface that you may never have saw before, and there it is. There it is. Okay. Now, I'm not getting counsel then. I'm just saying that I know people who do, and what I see they do really is great. You might be sitting there saying you need to go down and get some counseling, but I'm just saying that they do really good work. Okay, and I've seen this in other places here in town as well. Right? People of understanding have the ability to draw up things that you may not be able to see. Okay, so it's possible to know what is in your own heart other than God. You may be the only other one with the most knowledge. And I say maybe the only other one because age and experience may interfere with one's understanding. Someone with more experience may be necessary, like a parent, a psychiatrist, a pastor, etc., when it comes to motives and intentions. God looks first upon the heart. Maybe we should try to get into that habit as well. So we see some verses here. For instance, Proverbs 24:12 says, "If thou sayest, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth he not know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his work?" This is God speaking about, what if I make a mistake? I didn't know. Doesn't God know? Aren't you glad you know He's merciful? 1 Samuel 13:14 says, But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. That would be obviously David. 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said unto Samuel, Look not on his countenance, or in the heart of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but God, the Lord, looketh on the heart. Okay? So one of the things that we should be cautious about, at least right away, is we should not look upon the outward to determine the heart of an individual. Right? So what are some clues? What are some things we should do? Take a closer look at these verses. Deuteronomy 4:39 says, Know therefore this day and consider. So I'm on the next page. Know therefore this day and consider in thine heart that the Lord He is God in heaven above and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. So I can consider in my heart and know something in my heart. 1 Chronicles 29:17. I know this, my God, that thou triest the heart and hast pleasure in uprightness. As for me, in the uprightness of my heart. So David, in the uprightness of his heart, Hezekiah, in the uprightness of his heart, he knew his heart was upright. Do you get what I'm saying? We can know whether I have an upright heart. We can know things about God in my heart. So it's not that much of a mystery. Now notice Daniel chapter 2, verse 30. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, Daniel would say, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. So when the preaching of the word of God goes forth, and we recall Hebrews chapter number 4, and it says it's quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, able to divide asunder between the thought, even the intents of the heart and the mind. Do you see what we're saying? That when the word of God is preached of the Spirit of God, it's able to emanate the thoughts of our heart so that we can see it. And now we say, oh, woe is me. I am undone. I'm a sinner. I need to change. I need to do this. I need to do that. And that is the supernatural ability that God gives and does so that we can see the intents of our heart. Okay? So, we drop down to the means of knowing the heart. God shows His people how they can, it should be they, not that can, they can know the thoughts and intentions of their heart. So Deuteronomy 8:2. And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, and to prove to thee, and to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep His commandments or not. So the trials even reveal what's in our heart. How many of us go through trials and we don't do so well? We kick, we fuss, we fume, we get angry, we get attacked, we do this, we do that. Guess what? Those are things emanating out of our heart. Those actions, those emotions. And that has to now, once that's been revealed through the trial, I have it. There it is. Okay, that's me. I did that. What am I going to do with this? And some of us try to shove it back down or cover it all up. How about we just lay it out before the Lord and say, God, I've sinned. I've sinned before you. I've sinned against others. Just show me what I should do. Right? And take care of it. Deuteronomy 13:3. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, talking about false prophets, or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God proveth you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. I mean, I should be able to know to the best of my ability whether I love God with all my heart, with all my soul, don't I? I mean, I know there's more that He's going to show me, but if I have peace that I'm doing all that I know with the skill set and the abilities, shouldn't I have peace that I'm giving it the best? I'm giving my all, right? I don't have to worry that, He's very good at showing me if I'm not. Do you get what I'm saying? That's why another good thing about why we shouldn't always go back to someone else and say, you're the problem. It's you. God's so much better at that than me, right? So much better at that. And all I have to do is just sit back and pray for that individual, try to live the best I can in front of that individual, try to see if a door will open in which I can maybe give a counsel or drop a thought in to think about. But I don't have to force anything here. God's so much better at that. My dad spent 20-some years trying to make me into something. I went to church at Faith Baptist Church one day, and I totally changed in one moment. By the preaching of God's Word, I knew I was a sinner and I needed to be saved. And bang, it started, that change. All right? And so God can do it so much better. So as we kind of conclude things here, on the back page, so God allows the trials to reveal to all what is in the heart. So you remember me saying to you and to us, we should rejoice in trials, right? You know that from James. Every trial, temptation, we should joy in. And we sit there and say, what are you talking about? God, how do you do that? Because the purpose of that, those trials, is to show something. It's going to reveal where I'm wanting. In other words, where I have something missing and I want or I need something. It's going to show where I'm not perfect, where there needs to be a completion or a perfecting, right? It's going to show where I'm not entire, all right? Now, that's where I start in my self-examination. But human nature is to attack. Human nature is, no, it's you. It's not me, it's you. Right? And although we don't do that publicly in our heart, we're kind of like, no, it's you. We walk by someone and go, we do those sort of things. Now you're laughing because right? You've either seen me do it or you've done it, right? We've seen people do that. But when that trial is there, that troubling of my heart, Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. Well, then if it's troubled, why is it troubled? He says, if you believe in me, or you believe in God, believe in me also. And then he says later on, the peace that I give you for your troubled heart is not like what the world gives. So if I have a troubled heart, it's because I don't have peace. And that's a whole message I can run with for another hour, but I'm not going to. There's a lot to be said about why God used the word peace and why I'm troubled many times. But the fact is that if I'm troubled, how about let's flip it, the coin a little bit. Let's flip it and say, look, it's not about them causing the trouble. It's that God is allowing me to see this trouble because it's going to help me in some area. I can be made better in this area if I let God do it. And so I can go to the Lord and I can allow Him to show and minister to me. Because remember, you've heard me say this, the connecting piece for me is in this. When Jesus says in John 14, let us go hence, meaning He's going to go be arrested and crucified, He says, arise, let us go hence. He says, the prince of this world cometh and hath nothing in me. Wow. I want to be like that. I don't want to be troubled, even if Satan's coming for me. If Satan's coming for me, it's possible for me to still have peace and not be troubled. That's powerful. So God sometimes allows us to have these troubling moments to prepare us for something down the road, so that when I'm in that situation, Satan can't trouble me. Because there's going to be a lot dependent on me not being troubled and being able to handle something better than maybe in the past. Okay? So, moving on with the time we have. So, conclusion. God stated through Malachi that a curse was at hand for the actions of the priests and ultimately the people. Their efforts to hold back and keep the better resources for themselves led to a corruption of those resources. Like manna of old, any attempt to hoard against the will and command of God will turn to rot. So if I'm trying to keep even my best things for me, it will turn to rot somehow. Okay? It will. I think personal experience, and as in this kind of work for 30 some years, watching people hoarding, no, it's mine, and then find out it really, we've seen movies and stuff where, especially the Marvel movies, no, it's mine, and the thing turns on them and destroys them, right? We've seen things like that. That's what it is. It's mine, but no, it destroys them. And so their efforts to hold back are just going to turn into a rot. So verse 3 says this out of Malachi chapter 2. It says, "Behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces." Wow. And remember, that's God speaking. That's God. He said, you want to bring that bad stuff to me? Here, let me just show you how bad I can make it. I'm going to put dung on your faces. Whoa! Now, we might look at God this way and say, what an ogre, what a mean guy. No, he's doing this for a reason. He's making a really strong statement. He says, you're bringing me less than best. You do not respect and you do not see worth in what I've done for you and for your country and for your nation and for your families. Do you understand I have the power to make it really look bad on you? So bad that it would be like having dung on your faces. I have the power to do that. And they don't have any fear of the Lord in any of this. So he says, in my opinion, this condemnation reflects their heart. The priest's heart reflected what they prized. And notice the word seed. Get your thinking caps on. God says, behold, I will corrupt your seed. So they were trying to preserve their seed. What was their seed? Children. Now, you hit it. Bang. Good job. Whatever that means, right? Good job. All right? So, when we do charades, don't we do this or we do that or something? Moving on. So,
I think it's your stomach.
is that what it is? I'm supposed to?
I think so. I haven't played, but I've seen that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I got the game mixed up. I'm sorry. So the seed were their children. Too often today, we have parents elevating the worth of their homes above the worth of God's house. Beware. God made the Levites contemptible and base among the people for this very reason. The very last verse of Malachi is revealing in this matter. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So this is who? John the Baptist, right? Verse 6, and he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Interesting, he says it'll be the Lord that does this with the children. But he ties it to what's going on here in Malachi. I can only conclude that the nation was cursed because the homes were cursed, and the homes were cursed because they were not getting their priorities right. God's worth was not being projected to their families and their children. Now, let me just say there's no easy combination here. I'm not trying to do that. At some point, a child comes to understanding, and they make a choice. Either they're going to heed and follow the path that their parents have been pointing to, or they're not. Okay, there's just nothing you can do, right? But we want to give them the best chance, right? The best chance that the hearts of our children and grandchildren have in being blessed with the best is when we, the parents, give our best unto the Lord. Hear God and lay it to heart. In other words, it's a rare thing for us as parents or grandparents to not give our best unto the Lord, and for the children later on to come around and give their best. It's a rare thing. But the best chance I have to get my children to follow the Lord is if I give my best. Right? Then you'll be able to pillow your head. I'll be able to pillow my head with my children and say, it's not on me. It's not on me. I pointed it, I showed it, I lived it, I tried to give my best. If you choose not to do that, don't blame me. You're going to have to wear that one yourself. Okay? And at least you can have that peace at that point. But it requires that we as parents just do all we can to give our best to show God's worth in everything we do. Okay? And after that, it's just where it's going to go. Nothing else I can do. Okay? Any questions, comments? By the way, you might be asking, one of the big mistakes parents do, and you've heard me say this a couple times, it only takes 2 times, rarely does it take 3 to get a child's attention. It shouldn't take 10. Right? And I see it around here with parents all the time with their kids. They'll come in and they'll say, I'll just make up a name. Johnny, didn't I? Johnny! And here's where it goes. And you're like, no, it's Johnny. Johnny, come here now. Did you hear me? Yes. And I'm telling you, it's 90% of the time, it's yes. Okay. You just self-incriminated. Why didn't you answer? Why didn't you answer? All right? It's because they have been programmed to wait till it gets to a certain level or so many times. Guess what? Then they do with God. The same thing. I will only listen to God if he gets really hard with me. Oh, isn't that how it should go? What are you going to say, Dominic? They're getting it. And then what do I say? Would you like to lose those electronics for a week? Notice how fast the dishes get done then. All right. So let's go to some prayer here. I want to continue praying for Gabriella and Jasmine.